8 days passed and most humans had already forgotten about the alien threat. Children drew pictures of the funny-looking creatures in art class. Scientists wrote papers about the possibility of studying alien technology. Museum curators prepared special exhibits about ancient warfare to help people understand what the aliens were thinking. Admiral Jake Collins was reviewing vacation requests from his crew when the alarm started ringing, not the gentle chimes that usually announced meal times or shift changes, but the harsh electronic wailing that hadn't been heard in centuries. The sound was so old that the computer had to explain to the younger crew members what it meant. Lieutenant Katie Murphy burst into Jake's office again, but this time her face showed real concern instead of confusion. "Sir, they're here!" The aliens. 1,000 ships just appeared at the edge of our solar system. Jake looked up from his papers with mild interest. 1,000? That seems like a lot of trouble to go through just to make a point. Katie activated the main display screen, and Jake saw something that made him whistle softly. The alien fleet stretched across space like a moving city. Each ship was enormous, easily the size of the largest human space stations. They moved in perfect formation toward the inner solar system, their hulls glowing with energy that made the very fabric of space ripple around them. "They're trying to contact us," Katie reported. "Commander Zexthul wants to speak with you directly." "Put him through," Jake said, straightening his uniform out of politeness. The holographic display activated and the reptilian commander appeared, looking even more imposing than before. His 4 eyes burned with anger and his scales seemed to shift color with emotion. "Human Admiral," Zexthul growled. "Your time has ended. We offered mercy and you ignored us. Now you will face the full power of the Galactic Dominion." Jake smiled pleasantly. "Commander, welcome to our solar system. I hope you enjoyed the trip. The view of Saturn is particularly nice this time of year." Zexthul's eyes widened with surprise. "You dare mock us even now, when our weapons are pointed at your pathetic worlds?" "Oh, I'm not mocking you," Jake replied sincerely. "I'm just trying to be a good host. Would you like me to arrange a tour guide for your fleet? We have some excellent sightseeing routes through the asteroid belt." The alien commander made a sound that might have been frustration or rage. "Enough of this foolishness. All human vessels will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Jake looked around his office as if searching for something. "Katie, where did we put those old military protocols?" "The ones from the museum archive." "I can download them from the historical database, sir," Katie replied, trying not to smile. "Good idea." Jake nodded. "We might need to remember how these things work." Commander Zexthul's face turned a deeper shade of red. "You have 10 minutes to surrender. After that, we will demonstrate why the Galactic Dominion rules this galaxy." The transmission ended and Jake turned to Katie with a thoughtful expression. "You know what? I'm actually curious to see what their weapons can do. It's been so long since anyone tried to attack us that I've forgotten what our defenses are capable of." Jake opened a communication channel to the human fleet. The UES Harmony, humanity's flagship, was still broadcasting its usual tourism information and classical music to anyone who wanted to listen. Captain Amy Chen commanded the research vessel UES Discovery, which was busy studying the alien ships and sending excited reports about their interesting technology. "All ships. This is Admiral Collins," Jake announced. "We have some visitors who seem upset about something. They want to show us their weapons. I thought we might watch and see what happens." Across the solar system, human crews received the message with the same mild interest they might show for a weather report. On Mars, children pressed their faces against observation deck windows to watch the pretty lights in space. On Luna Base, Commander Pete Rodriguez set up chairs in the main viewing area and offered popcorn to anyone who wanted to watch the show. The alien fleet arranged itself in a massive battle formation that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Energy weapons that could crack planets began charging with power that made space itself glow. Missiles loaded with exotic matter prepared to launch. The most advanced military technology in the known galaxy prepared to demonstrate why no species had ever successfully resisted the Galactic Dominion. Commander Zexthul gave the order to fire. 1,000 ships unleashed destruction that should have vaporized everything in its path. Energy beams bright enough to be seen from Earth lanced out toward human vessels. Explosions that could have destroyed moons erupted in the vacuum of space. The attack was so powerful that it created its own light show visible throughout the solar system. When the light faded, the human ships floated peacefully in space, completely undamaged. They were still broadcasting tourism advertisements and classical music as if nothing had happened. Jake watched the battle from his office with academic interest. Fascinating. Their energy weapons work on completely different principles than ours. Very inefficient, though. Captain Amy Chen's voice came through the communication system, sounding excited. Admiral, the Discovery's sensors recorded everything. Their weapon technology is about 3,000 years behind ours, but the principles are quite innovative. We could probably help them improve their efficiency by at least 40%. Commander Zexthal stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Every weapon in his arsenal had fired at maximum power. The energy output had been enough to sterilize entire star systems, yet the human ships showed no damage at all. Fire again, he ordered. All weapons. Maximum power. The second attack was even more intense than the first. The aliens used kinetic weapons this time, launching projectiles that moved at significant fractions of light speed. They fired exotic matter warheads that could destabilize atomic bonds. They even tried ramming attacks, sending their smaller ships directly at human vessels. Nothing worked. The human defensive systems, originally designed to protect against cosmic radiation and space debris, absorbed every attack without strain. The shields didn't even flicker. On Earth, people gathered in parks and on rooftops to watch the light show in space. Street vendors quickly set up stalls selling alien attack viewing party snacks. Children played with toy spaceships, reenacting the battle with stuffed alien toys that manufacturers had produced overnight. Dr. Alex Thompson, watching from Europa Research Station, sent a message to his colleagues. The aliens seem to be operating under the assumption that we're as primitive as they are. Their tactics suggest they've never encountered a truly advanced civilization before. Jake opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. Commander Zexthal's face appeared on screen, but now he looked confused and frightened instead of angry. "Commander, are you having technical difficulties?" Jake asked with genuine concern. "Your weapons don't seem to be working properly. We'd be happy to help you run diagnostics." "This is impossible," Zexthal whispered. "Nothing can withstand our full fleet assault." "What are you?" Jake considered the question seriously. "We're humans, Commander. We've been living peacefully for 3,000 years. We build our ships to last and our defenses to protect us from the hazards of space travel. But your defenses, they're stronger than anything we've ever encountered." Jake shrugged. "We build things to work well. It's just good engineering practice." Commander Zexthal looked at his tactical officers who were frantically checking their systems. Everything was working perfectly. Their weapons were operating at full capacity. The problem wasn't their technology. The problem was that they had attacked beings so far beyond their understanding that their most powerful weapons were like throwing rocks at a mountain. "What do you want from us?" Zexthal asked quietly. Jake thought about the question. "Honestly, we're curious about your culture. It's been a very long time since we met anyone who still thought violence was a solution to problems. Would you be interested in cultural exchange?" 3 weeks passed with the alien fleet floating helplessly at the edge of the solar system. Commander Zexthal had tried every weapon in his arsenal and nothing had worked. His ships were running low on supplies and his crew was getting restless. Some of his officers suggested retreat, but Zexthal knew that returning home with news of defeat would mean execution for the entire fleet. Meanwhile, humans continued their normal lives. The alien presence had become background noise, like a distant thunderstorm that everyone knew was there but nobody worried about. Children went to school, adults went to work, and the space stations continued their regular operations. Then something changed. It started when the aliens attacked Demeter 5, one of humanity's agricultural stations orbiting Jupiter. The attack wasn't aimed at humans, but at the vast hydroponic farms that fed millions of people throughout the outer colonies. Commander Zexthal thought that destroying food supplies might force humans to surrender. The attack succeeded in destroying several farming modules, but the advanced shielding systems protected every human life. Nobody died, but the food that should have fed families on Europa and Ganymede burned in the vacuum of space. Dr. Carol Stevens was working late in her genetics lab on Europa Station when she heard about the attack. She was studying how plants adapted to different gravity levels, peaceful research that had occupied her for years. When she learned that months of careful agricultural work had been destroyed, something shifted inside her mind. "They destroyed food," she said quietly to her research partner Dr. Frank Miller. "They attacked our ability to feed our children." Frank nodded, feeling the same strange sensation. It's been 3,000 years since anyone deliberately tried to harm humans. Carol accessed her computer terminal and began searching through databases that hadn't been opened in centuries. Frank, I want to check something. The Heritage Archives. The Heritage Archives contained humanity's complete history, including detailed records of every war, every battle, and every military strategy humans had ever developed. The files had been sealed away when war became obsolete, but they still existed. Carol, those files require special authorization, Frank warned. You need approval from all 12 colony commanders plus Earth's governing council. Then let's get it, Carol replied, her voice carrying a tone Frank had never heard before. The authorization requests spread through human space faster than anyone expected. Colonel Ryan Park on Mars read Carol's message and felt something stir in his chest. Governor Lisa Martinez on Luna Base approved the request within minutes. Admiral Jake Collins signed off without hesitation. Within 6 hours, all required approvals came through. For the first time in 3,000 years, humans began accessing their military heritage. Carol and Frank worked through the night, reading files that their grandparents had never seen. They learned about ancient human conflicts, about strategies and tactics, about the psychology of warfare. Most importantly, they learned about what humans had been before they chose peace. Frank, Carol said, her voice barely above a whisper, look at this genetic analysis from the old archives. The data showed something that made both scientists sit back in their chairs. The peaceful nature that humans had developed over 3 millennia wasn't genetic evolution. It was learned behavior, cultural adaptation that could be changed. We're still the same species that conquered Earth, Frank said slowly. We just forgot how to fight. Across human space, similar discoveries were taking place. Lieutenant Grace Walker on Mars Defense Force accessed tactical manuals and found herself understanding concepts that should have been completely foreign. Captain Tony Green on the research vessel UES Newton downloaded weapon specifications and realized he could build them with current human technology. The change was subtle at first. Humans began moving differently, thinking differently. Ship captains started positioning their vessels for tactical advantage instead of fuel efficiency. Communication channels shifted from open broadcast to encrypted military networks. Most importantly, humans stopped treating the alien threat as entertainment. Commander Zex Thul noticed the changes through his intelligence reports. Human manufacturing had increased by 500% overnight, but they weren't building defensive systems. The energy signatures suggested weapons, but the designs didn't match anything in Galactic Dominion databases. What are they building? He demanded of his intelligence officer. Unknown, Commander. The technology appears to be based on ancient human designs, but modified with their current capabilities. Zexthul studied the reports with growing unease. The humans had been laughing at him for weeks, treating his threats like jokes. Now they had stopped laughing. On Earth, military academies that had served as museums for centuries suddenly received thousands of applications, not for historical study but for active training. Young humans who had never seen violence began learning to use weapons their ancestors had abandoned. Dr. Helen Carter, a psychologist studying the changes in human behavior, made a disturbing discovery. She was monitoring the brain activity of volunteers who were studying military history, and the results frightened her. The neural pathways for strategic thinking and tactical analysis are activating, she reported to her colleagues. These aren't learned responses. They're dormant capabilities that are waking up. Admiral Jake Collins felt the changes in himself too. He looked in the mirror one morning and saw something different in his eyes. Something that remembered how to hate. Maria, he said to his wife during their daily video call, I think we're becoming something we haven't been for a very long time. Maria Collins, safe in their home on Earth, nodded sadly. I can see it in you, Jake, in all of you. The question is whether you can control it. The transformation accelerated when more alien attacks targeted civilian infrastructure. A research station studying dolphin communication was destroyed. A children's school on Titan was damaged. Each attack harmed no humans directly, but destroyed things that humans cared about. With each loss, humanity remembered more about what they used to be. Captain Luke Davis, commanding the cargo hauler UES Prosperity, received new orders that would have confused him a month earlier. Now they made perfect sense. He was to modify his ship according to specifications that had been classified for 3 millennia. Sir, his engineering officer asked, Are we really going to turn a cargo ship into a weapon? Luke studied the modification plans with eyes that saw possibilities his ancestors would have recognized immediately. We're not turning it into a weapon. We're remembering what it always could have been. Commander Zexthul watched human ship movements with growing alarm. The random patterns of peaceful exploration had been replaced by formations he didn't recognize but instinctively feared. The humans were preparing for something, but their preparations followed no military doctrine in Dominion databases. Commander, his tactical officer reported, human communications have gone completely dark. We can't intercept anything. What about their ship movements? They're following patterns that seem random, but our computers detect underlying structure. It's like they're following a battle plan we can't decode. Zexthul stared at the tactical display showing human positions throughout the solar system. For 3 weeks, he had been fighting opponents who seemed more interested in studying him than defeating him. Now those same opponents had disappeared behind a veil of silence and preparation. For the first time since arriving in the solar system, Commander Zexthul began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had stopped laughing, and somehow that was more terrifying than any weapon he had ever faced. The hunters were waking up, and they remembered everything. The morning started like any other morning in the year 5024. Admiral Jake Collins sat behind his desk on Orbital Station Alpha 7, drinking his coffee and reading reports about space traffic near Jupiter. The reports were boring as usual. Trade ships moving between colonies, research vessels collecting samples from asteroid fields, and tourist shuttles carrying families to see the rings of Saturn. Nothing exciting ever happened anymore, and Jake liked it that way. Peace had lasted for 3,000 years now. Children grew up without knowing what war meant. The old military bases had become museums where people looked at ancient weapons and wondered how their ancestors could have been so violent. Cities on Earth stretched high into the clouds, powered by clean energy that never ran out. Mars had green parks and blue lakes. Even the frozen moons of the outer planets had become comfortable places to live. Jake was about to finish his coffee when Lieutenant Katie Murphy rushed into his office. Her face showed excitement mixed with confusion. She carried a data pad that was flashing with urgent message alerts. "Sir, we just received a transmission from outside the solar system," Katie said, setting the pad on his desk. "It's from aliens," Jake raised an eyebrow. Humans had been searching for alien life for thousands of years, but had never found any. "Are you sure it's not some kind of joke or mistake?" "No, sir, the signal came from deep space and the technology is definitely not human," Katie replied. "The translation computers have been working on it for the last hour. You need to see this." Jake activated the holographic display above his desk. The image flickered and then showed something that made him sit back in his chair. A large reptilian creature with red scales and 4 eyes stared back at him. Behind the creature stood other aliens of different shapes and sizes. Some looked like insects, others like walking plants, and a few resembled nothing Jake had ever seen before. The main creature began speaking in a deep voice that made the office walls vibrate slightly. "Primitive species of Sol 3, it said, using the old scientific name for Earth. "I am Commander Zexthul of the Galactic Dominion. You have been found guilty of expanding into territory that belongs to our ancient empire. Your continued existence threatens the natural order of the galaxy." Jake blinked several times and looked at Katie, who shrugged her shoulders. The alien continued its speech. "We are generous rulers and offer you one chance to avoid total destruction. You have 7 solar cycles to surrender completely. Remove all your colonies from space. Destroy your ships. Return to your home planet and never leave it again. If you refuse, we will come with our great fleet and turn every human world into dust. This is your only warning." The transmission ended and the office became quiet except for the hum of the air recycling system. Jake stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. Katie waited for his response, then Jake started laughing. It began as a small chuckle but grew louder and louder until tears ran down his cheeks. He laughed so hard that he had to hold his sides. Katie stared at her commander with worry. "Sir, are you feeling all right?" she asked. Jake wiped his eyes and tried to control himself.
"Katie, do you know what just happened?"
"Someone just tried to threaten us with war." "War, Katie, can you believe it?" Katie looked confused. "But sir, what if they're serious? What if they really do have a big fleet?" Jake stood up and walked to the large window that showed Earth hanging in space like a blue and green jewel.
"Katie, when was the last time anyone threatened humanity with violence?"
Katie thought for a moment. "I learned about it in history class. The last war ended in 2024 with the Great Unification. That was 3,000 years ago. Exactly, Jake said, still smiling. 3,000 years of peace. Our children don't even know what weapons are for except in museums. Our ships are built for exploration and comfort, not fighting. Our biggest worry is usually whether we have enough ice cream flavors at the space stations. Jake activated his communication system. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Luna Base, Mars Colony, and all the outer system governors. Priority 1. Within minutes, faces appeared on screens around Jake's office. Governor Lisa Martinez from Mars Colony looked curious. Commander Pete Rodriguez from Luna Base was eating lunch. The other leaders all seemed relaxed and happy. Friends, Jake began, we've just received what I believe is humanity's first declaration of war in 3,000 years. I'm sending you the transmission now. Jake played the alien message for all the human leaders. He watched their faces carefully as Commander Zexthal made his threats. Governor Martinez started giggling halfway through. Commander Rodriguez nearly choked on his sandwich when the alien mentioned destroying human worlds. By the end of the message, everyone was laughing. This is incredible, said Dr. Alex Thompson from Europa Research Station. Real aliens, and they still think in terms of conquest and territory. It's like finding a living dinosaur. Should we send them a reply? Asked Commander Rodriguez, wiping tears from his eyes. What would we even say? Laughed Governor Martinez. Thank you for the entertainment. Dr. Nina Foster, the head of Earth's Science Council, spoke up. From an anthropological perspective, this is fascinating. These aliens seem to be stuck in a primitive developmental stage. They still believe that violence solves problems, Jake nodded. The question is, how do we handle this? Do we take them seriously? We should probably prepare some kind of response, suggested Katie, even if it's just to be polite. You know what, Jake said, his smile getting wider. Let's treat this like the historical curiosity it is. Send word to all the museums. Tell them to dust off their military history displays. The children will want to learn about how warfare used to work. Commander Rodriguez laughed again. My grandson is going to love this. He's been studying ancient history and asking me what battles were like. Now I can show him what people used to think war meant. Jake looked around at all the screens showing human leaders still chuckling about the alien threat. I'll send a standard diplomatic response. Something polite but firm. We'll let them know that humanity doesn't engage in warfare anymore, but we're happy to discuss their concerns through peaceful negotiation. What if they actually show up with ships? Asked Governor Martinez. Jake shrugged. Then we'll deal with it the same way we handle any other problem. Calmly, rationally, and with minimal fuss. After all, how dangerous could they be? The meeting ended with everyone still smiling. Jake sat back in his chair and looked at Katie, who had been quiet during the entire conversation. Katie, make sure all our defensive systems are working properly. Not because I'm worried about these aliens, but because it's been a while since we tested them. Yes, sir, Katie replied. Though I should mention that our defensive systems weren't really built for warfare. They're designed to protect against asteroids and cosmic radiation. Jake waved his hand dismissively. I'm sure they'll work just fine. After all, what could go wrong? The first human counterattack came from the most unexpected source. The UES Prosperity was a simple cargo hauler that had spent 15 years moving supplies between Jupiter's moons. Captain Luke Davis had been transporting ice and manufactured goods when the aliens arrived, and nothing about his ship suggested it could be dangerous. That changed after Luke received his new orders and the modification plans from the Heritage Archives. Working in shifts around the clock, his engineering crew transformed their peaceful cargo vessel into something else entirely. They didn't remove the cargo containers or change the ship's external appearance. Instead, they modified what the containers could do. Sir, the modifications are complete, reported Chief Engineer Sandra Kim. All systems are operational and ready for testing. Luke studied the control panel that hadn't existed a week earlier. The buttons and displays looked innocent enough, but he knew they controlled weapon systems based on technology that was 3,000 years old, but built with modern human engineering. Any word from Admiral Collins? Luke asked. Yes, sir. He says we're free to begin field testing at our discretion. Luke nodded and activated his communication system. The UES Prosperity began broadcasting exactly what it had always broadcast, shipping manifests and requests for docking clearance from nearby stations. To any observer, it appeared to be conducting normal cargo operations. 3 Dominion patrol ships detected the Prosperity and moved to intercept. Commander Zexthul had ordered his forces to capture human vessels whenever possible, hoping to learn how their defenses worked. The lead alien ship hailed the Prosperity with the standard demand for surrender. Luke responded politely, offering to show them his cargo manifest and explaining that he was simply delivering supplies to Europa Station. "Human vessel, you will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded," the alien commander ordered. "I'm sorry, but I have a delivery schedule to keep," Luke replied pleasantly. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting later when I'm not so busy." The alien ships moved closer, preparing to use their tractor beams to capture the cargo hauler. Luke waited until they were in optimal position, then activated his modifications. The cargo containers unfolded like flowers blooming in space. What had appeared to be simple storage units revealed themselves as weapon systems that followed principles the Galactic Dominion had never encountered. Instead of trying to overwhelm alien defenses with raw power, the human weapons did something far more elegant. They convinced the alien ships to stop existing. The 3 patrol vessels didn't explode or burn or break apart. They simply ceased to be there, as if they had never existed in the first place. The process was so clean that it left no debris, no energy signature, and no evidence that anything had happened except for the sudden absence of 3 enemy ships. "Clean kill," Luke reported to Admiral Collins with the same tone he might use to report a successful cargo delivery. "No debris field. The neighbors won't complain about the mess." This became humanity's new approach to warfare, not the passionate, chaotic battles of their ancestors, but precise, efficient elimination of problems with minimal fuss. Modern humans fought the way they did everything else, with careful planning, excellent engineering, and complete professional competence. Commander Zexthul received the report about his missing patrol ships with confusion rather than alarm. Ships disappeared in space sometimes due to equipment failures or navigation errors. It wasn't until more patrols failed to report back that he began to understand what was happening. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were hunting his forces with the methodical patience of exterminators dealing with pests. Captain Tony Green commanded the converted research vessel UES Newton, which had been studying asteroid compositions before the war began. His ship's modifications were even more subtle than the Prosperity's. The Newton still looked and acted exactly like a research vessel, broadcasting scientific data and requesting permission to collect samples. When a Dominion heavy cruiser approached to investigate, Tony greeted them with enthusiasm. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Green of the UES Newton. We're conducting a survey of metallic asteroid distribution in this region. Your ship has some fascinating design elements. Would you be interested in participating in our research?" The alien commander was suspicious but curious. Human technology had proven surprisingly advanced, and capturing examples might help the Dominion understand how to defeat them. "What kind of research?" the alien asked. "We're studying structural engineering techniques used by different species," Tony replied cheerfully. "Your hull design uses some interesting approaches to stress distribution. We'd love to get detailed scans." The alien ship moved closer, thinking it was about to capture valuable intelligence. Tony waited until the perfect moment, then activated his modifications. The Dominion cruiser found itself surrounded by devices that looked like scientific instruments, but functioned as something entirely different. Instead of studying the ship's structure, they began improving it in ways the aliens hadn't asked for. "Fascinating," Tony reported to his crew as they watched the alien vessel transform. "Their hull design really was inefficient. We've improved their structural integrity by about 60%. The problem was that the improvements made the ship too heavy to maintain its current orbit. The enhanced hull design created gravitational anomalies that interfered with the ship's own engines. Within minutes, the alien cruiser was drifting helplessly in space, its crew unharmed but completely unable to control their vessel. "Should we tow them somewhere safe?" Tony asked Admiral Collins. "Send them to Ceres Station," Jake replied. "Our guest facilities there can accommodate visitors while we figure out what to do with them." This pattern repeated throughout the solar system as humans began their counterattack. Every engagement followed the same philosophical approach. Instead of destroying enemies, humans improved them in ways that made them incapable of fighting. Ships were enhanced until they couldn't function. Weapon systems were upgraded until they shut themselves down. Even alien crew members received helpful medical treatments that left them feeling better than ever, but completely incapable of violent thoughts. The psychological impact on Dominion forces proved more devastating than any traditional weapon could have been. They had come expecting glorious battle against worthy opponents. Instead, they faced beings who treated warfare like routine maintenance, showing the same mild interest they might display when repairing malfunctioning equipment. Captain Janet Ross, newly appointed as Director of Alien Relations, began sending technical manuals to Dominion ships. The documents offered detailed suggestions for improving their military equipment, followed by explanations of how humans had already developed countermeasures for each suggested improvement. Dear Dominion Engineering Corps, one typical message began, we've analyzed your plasma cannon design and identified 17 ways to increase efficiency. We've attached detailed schematics. Please note that we've also developed defensive measures for all 17 improvements, but we thought you might find the theoretical exercise interesting. Commander Sam Johnson implemented what became known as the Customer Service Protocol. When alien ships approached Europa's orbital defenses, they received cheerful welcome messages, tourist information about local attractions, and helpful navigation assistance right up until the moment they were peacefully disabled. Welcome to Europa orbital space, Sam's automated systems would announce. Please maintain a safe distance from all civilian traffic. If you're here for military purposes, please note that we've prepared comfortable accommodations for prisoners of war. The meals are quite good and the view of Jupiter is spectacular. The aliens found this treatment more unnerving than any threat could have been. They had been trained to fight enemies who showed fear, anger, or hatred. They had no idea how to respond to opponents who offered them helpful advice while systematically dismantling their fleet. Back on Earth, life continued normally, despite the ongoing war. Children attended school while their parents casually discussed the day's battle reports over dinner. The conflict had become background noise in human society, no more disruptive than weather forecasts. How was your day, honey? Became a question that might be answered with fine. We captured 3 more alien ships and sent them to the rehabilitation center. Commander Zexthol found himself commanding a shrinking fleet of increasingly demoralized troops. His forces weren't being destroyed, which somehow made the situation worse. They were being collected like specimens and treated with the kind of polite professional care that made them feel like problems that needed solving, rather than warriors, deserving respect. The final insult came when humans began sending care packages to the remaining Dominion ships. The packages contained food, entertainment materials, and helpful guides to local customs, along with polite notes expressing hope that the aliens were comfortable during their stay in the solar system. One note, signed by a group of human children, included drawings of alien ships with smiling faces and a message that read, "Thank you for visiting our solar system. We hope you learn to be happy like us." 6 months after the Galactic Dominion's declaration of war, Commander Zexthol found himself sitting in Admiral Jake Collins' office aboard Orbital Station Alpha 7. He was not a prisoner, though his ship was the only one left from the once mighty invasion fleet. He had not surrendered, though his weapons were useless and his crew spent, their days receiving medical care and educational materials from their human captors. The office looked exactly like it had on that first day when the aliens had announced their intention to destroy humanity. Jake still sat behind the same desk, still drank coffee from the same cup, and still treated military matters with the casual attention most people gave to routine administrative tasks. "Commander, thank you for accepting our invitation," Jake said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "I hope you've been finding our accommodations satisfactory." Zexthol's 4 eyes studied the human admiral with an expression that mixed confusion, frustration, and something that might have been respect. "You are not what we expected." "I imagine not," Jake replied, pouring tea for his guest. "Would you prefer coffee? We have several varieties. Your species has destroyed my entire fleet without killing a single member of my crew." Zexthol continued, ignoring the offer of refreshments. "You have treated us better than we treat our own allies. I do not understand your strategy." Jake considered the statement while adding sugar to his own cup. "Strategy implies we're playing some kind of game against you, Commander." "We're not. We're simply dealing with a situation that required our attention." Captain Janet Ross entered the office carrying a thick folder of documents. As humanity's Director of Alien Relations, she had spent the last 6 months studying Dominion culture and psychology. Her findings had led to this final meeting. "Commander Zexthol," Janet said, taking a seat beside Jake's desk. We've completed our analysis of your military doctrine and social structure. We thought you might be interested in our conclusions. Zexthul straightened in his chair. As a military commander, he understood the importance of intelligence analysis. You have studied us? Of course, Janet replied, opening her folder. You came here with the intention of destroying our civilization. We needed to understand why. Jake activated a holographic display that showed detailed charts and graphs. Commander, your species appears to be trapped in what we call an adolescent developmental phase. You're still competing for resources and territory instead of learning to transcend material limitations. The hologram showed a comparison between Dominion, society, and dozens of other species that humans had now encountered through intercepted communications. The pattern was clear and consistent. Every aggressive species we've studied follows the same basic pattern, Janet explained. Scarcity-based thinking, hierarchical power structures, and the belief that survival requires defeating others. It's a natural phase in social evolution, but most species grow beyond it eventually. Zexthul's scales shifted color as he processed this information. You speak of us as if we are children. Not children, Jake said gently. Adolescents. There's a significant difference. Children lack the capacity for complex reasoning. Adolescents have the intelligence but haven't yet learned emotional maturity. Janet pulled up another display showing human historical data. We went through the same phase ourselves. For most of our history, we believed that violence was the ultimate solution to problems. We built weapons designed to destroy our own planet. We fought wars that accomplished nothing except creating more reasons to fight. What changed? Zexthul asked, despite himself becoming genuinely interested. We learned that cooperation produces better results than competition, Jake replied. It took us thousands of years and nearly destroying ourselves several times. But eventually we figured out that working together was more efficient than fighting. The holographic display showed the progression of human civilization from primitive warfare through the development of increasingly destructive weapons, ending with the Great Unification and 3 millennia of peace. Your species has the same potential, Janet said. We've studied your biology, your psychology, and your cultural patterns. There's nothing preventing you from making the same developmental leap we made. Zexthul stared at the data with growing understanding. You are offering to teach us? We're offering to help you grow, Jake corrected. Teaching implies we have knowledge you lack. Growth means developing capabilities you already possess but haven't learned to use properly. Janet activated another display showing the current status of Zexthul's crew. Your people have been participating in our cultural exchange programs for 6 months now. The results have been remarkable. The data showed Dominion crew members learning human arts, sciences, and philosophy. Their stress levels had decreased dramatically. Their cognitive function had improved. Most surprisingly, many had voluntarily given up their military ranks in favor of civilian occupations. Sub-Commander Vorth has become quite accomplished at sculpture, Janet noted. Lieutenant Kess is studying theoretical physics and making significant contributions to our research. Even your tactical officer has requested training in conflict resolution techniques. Zexthul felt something he had never experienced before, a sensation that humans would have recognized as cognitive dissonance. Everything he had believed about strength, power, and survival was being challenged by evidence he could not dispute. What happens to my mission? He asked quietly. What happens to the Galactic Dominion? Jake and Janet exchanged glances. They had anticipated this question and prepared their answer carefully. That depends on you, Jake said. We could send you home with a report about your defeat, knowing that your superiors would probably execute you for failure. That seems wasteful. Alternatively, Janet continued, we could send you home as ambassadors for a new way of thinking. Your crew has learned skills that could revolutionize Dominion society. You could teach them what you've learned here. Zexthul considered the options. Both paths led away from everything he had known, but one offered hope while the other promised only punishment. There is a third option, Jake said after a long pause. You could stay here and help us prepare for the next group of aliens who discover humanity and make the same mistake you did. The holographic display changed to show long-range sensor data. Dozens of other alien civilizations existed within traveling distance of Earth, and many showed the same aggressive patterns as the Dominion. We've detected at least 47 species that seem to be in the same developmental phase as your people, Janet explained. Sooner or later, some of them will probably decide that humanity needs to be conquered or destroyed. You want us to help you fight our own kind? Zexthul asked. We want you to help us teach them, Jake corrected. Fighting is inefficient. Education is much more effective in the long term. Zexthul looked around the office, considering everything he had learned. 6 months ago, he had commanded the most powerful military force in known space. Now he sat in a human office drinking alien tea and discussing philosophy with beings who had casually dismantled his entire worldview. What would this teaching involve? He asked. Janet smiled. We call it the Galactic Peace Education Initiative. Former military officers from aggressive species work as counselors, helping other civilizations learn to resolve conflicts through cooperation instead of conquest. Jake pulled up plans for a new type of space station designed specifically for cultural exchange. We're building facilities throughout human space where representatives from different species can meet, learn, and grow together. Your experience with military thinking would be invaluable in helping us understand how to reach other aggressive cultures. Zexthul studied the plans with the tactical mind that had made him one of the Dominion's most successful commanders. The design was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of weapons or defenses, the stations emphasized communication, education, and cultural sharing. You really believe this will work? He asked. Commander, Jake said, standing up and walking to the large window that showed Earth hanging in space. 3,000 years ago, my ancestors were just as violent and aggressive as your people. They built weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. They fought wars over resources that could have been shared. They believed that strength meant the ability to defeat enemies. Jake turned back to face his alien guest. Today, human children learn about war as ancient history. They grow up believing that cooperation is natural and violence is a curious relic from the past. If we can change that much, anyone can. Zexthul made his decision. I will need to speak with my crew. Of course, Janet said. Take as much time as you need. 3 days later, Commander Zexthul, now Director Zexthul of the Galactic Peace Education Initiative, sent his first report back to the Dominion homeworld. Instead of describing military defeat, he wrote about discovery, growth, and the possibility of a future where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the capacity to create and nurture. The universe had gained its first group of reformed warriors, and humanity had taken its first step toward becoming the galaxy's most patient teachers.